Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Astatarasatasi Srimad His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Gaur Premanandi Govoka Vrindavan Mathura Madhurapuri Vaikuntha We're getting lots of variety here from this pastime where the resident of Vrindavan, after hearing from Nanda about his seeing the abode of Varuna and all of that, Varuna worshipping Krishna and everything, they started to speculate again. Who is he? And they, at least for a flash, they concluded, he's the Supreme Lord. And so they wanted to see his abode. Specifically, the language used in their contemplation, because they didn't say it to Krishna, but the terminology that was used in the Bhagavatam is Vaikuntha and Brahman. Now, we're accustomed to hearing Brahman referring to a feature of the Absolute Truth, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. However, Brahman can mean different things according to the context. And it can mean the abode of transcendence, meaning Vaikuntha is within the Brahma Jyoti, and so the Vaikuntha is also Brahman. But it's more than Brahman, but it's also Brahman. The form of Krishna, which is Satchit Ananda, is also Sat. So it can also be described in that terms, in the term of Brahman. So what they saw, the verse that we've been discussing and continue this morning and tomorrow, they saw the Brahma Jyoti. So Krishna, what happened was after that contemplation, Krishna considered how to show them what they wanted to see. And the arrangement was, on an auspicious day, they went to take bath in the river Jamuna at a particular place, the same place where Akrura had gone to see what he saw. Right? Akrura? You familiar? Akrura took Krishna and Balaram to Mathura. Okay. That same place where Akrura saw what Akrura saw is where they went. Kind of like a celebrated place. They took their bath. Krishna went with them. They immersed themselves in the river, and then Krishna lifted them up and displayed Goloka. So we've been hearing that Goloka, which they saw, was replete or full with opulences, Aishvarya. And that Aishvarya, Goloka, is within Gokula. It's not, so the terms are Gokula. Sometimes it's different also according to context, but Gokula commonly, at least pretty consistently within our Acharya's terminology, Gokula means where Krishna is performing his worldly manifest pastimes. His Prakat Lila is called it, is what he showed to everybody. Gokula. And within Gokula is Goloka. But Goloka is not seen by everybody. Gokula can be seen even by demons. Goloka cannot be seen by demons or anyone unless one is very qualified, and we're going to hear this morning what's the qualification. But certainly it requires Krishna shows his mercy even if one is qualified. So qualification and mercy, then one can see the unmanifest pastimes, the eternal unmanifest pastimes of Krishna. Aprakat Lila is the Sanskrit. Prakat, manifest. Aprakat, not manifest. So we're going to hear some very interesting things about this three things. Nomenclature, what is Vaikuntha mean when it's used? What does it apply? What is the application of Vaikuntha? Goloka, Gokula, Mathura, Madhurapuri. Those are specific terms that are used to refer to specific things. Sometimes they're interchangeable, sometimes there's some distinction. We'll hear a little bit about that. The second thing is this mention of Brahmajyoti, because this is text 15, 10:28:15. They saw the Brahmajyoti, they wanted to see, so Krishna showed. And what's the third thing? Nomenclature, the Brahmajyoti. Well, I'll remember it as we go along. So reading, starting this morning from reading, as we did yesterday morning, commentary from Devaki's prayers. Devaki offered prayers to Krishna in chapter 3, just after Krishna appeared in the prison house of Kamsa. Vasudeva offered his prayers, Devaki offered her prayers. And this is commentary on her prayers. They saw the four-armed form, Vasudeva Krishna. Commentary reads, Krishna, Vishnu, is the actual origin of everything, as stated in 10:13:55. So 10:13:55, that's Brahma saw what Brahma saw after he stole the calves and cowherd boys and Krishna showed what he showed. There's description of what he saw. That's chapter 13. So here's the Sanskrit short. Yasya bhasha sarvam idam vibhati. Lord Brahma saw the Supreme Brahman, by whose energy this entire universe with its moving and non-moving living beings is manifested. Continues, the Absolute Truth is described later in Srimad Bhagavatam. That's our verse, this morning verse, 10:28:15, as Satyam Jnanam Anantam Yad Brahmajyoti Sanatanam. The Brahmajyoti is Sanatana, or eternal, yet it is dependent on Krishna. Brahmanohi Pratishtaham. That's from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14. Chapter 14 is the modes of nature. At the end of that chapter, everything is resting in Brahman, and Brahman is resting upon Krishna. Brahmanohi Pratishtaham. Important verse. The Brahma Samhita states that the Lord is all-pervading. Andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam. We're going to hear this quoted again later also, 5:35. That's text 35 from Brahma Samhita. So the Lord is all-pervading. He is within this universe, and he is within the atom as Paramatma. Again, Brahma Samhita, Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagadanda Koti, Kotish Vashesha Vasudhari Vibhuti Binnam. Brahman is also not independent of him. Therefore, whatever a philosopher may describe is ultimately Krishna or Vishnu. Quoting the Shrutis, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, very celebrated text, which Mayavadis misunderstand and devotees have a clear understanding. Krishna is the source of everything, and therefore, because he's the source of everything, in one sense, his energies or whatever comes from him is also him, because it's from him. And from Bhagavad Gita 10:12. So quiz question. Which are the Chatur Shloki verses of Bhagavad Gita? They start where and end where? Yeah, 10:8 to 10:11, right? So here's 10. After Arjuna hears the Chatur Shloki verses, what does he say? Param Brahma Param Dhamma Pavitram Paramam Bhavan. Prabhupada is quoting that as whatever a philosopher may describe is ultimately Krishna or Lord Vishnu. According to different phases of understanding, Lord Vishnu is differently described, but in fact, he is the origin of everything. Now, why is this here? It's here because it's making reference to our verse this morning, 10:28:15. But what Krishna is disclosing, Krishna is the absolute truth, and they accept that. They want to see his abode, so he's showing his abode, at least certain features of his abode. And when seeing the features of his abode, a proper understanding is being presented. You're seeing what? You're seeing his abode, which is not different than him, etc. In fact, what is there that's different from him? There's nothing that's different from him, and yet everything is different from him because they're not the source and he's the source. Next, Gopal Tapani Upanishad. Gopal Tapani Upanishad is especially appreciated by Vaishnava acharyas, not that the other Upanishads are disregarded, but it has special regard because, keeping it simple, there's some Upanishads that are dry, some are moist, and some are very juicy. And Gopal Tapani Upanishad is very clear about Krishna's position. Here's quoting the translation from Gopal Tapani Upanishad. The form, that's the form of the Lord, which appears in this material world and then disappears, remains in its spiritual abode. The forms for humans are Tamasi, Rajasi, and Sattviki, ignorance, passion, goodness. The form, that's the form of the Lord, resides in Bhakti Yoga, which is full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, which, like Krishna, is filled with knowledge and bliss. That's Gopal Tapani Upanishad. The form, so this is now commentary on that. The form, again, is the form of the Lord, which sometimes appears in the world, and then disappears, resides in its own abode called Goloka, a special manifestation of Sri Vrindavan. Quote, living in his own abode, that's from this Gopal Tapani reference. Living in his abode, his own abode, means that he lives in his abode, which is most attractive, manifested with all perfection. Krishna himself describes this in Gautamiya Tantra. Quote, this pleasant Vrindavan is my only abode. This place, measuring 5 yojanas, is non-different from my body, the Jamuna. Flowing with the sweetest nectar is the Shushumna. Shushumna means central nerve, kind of like your nervous system, and there's primary nerve, so Shushumna of the body. The Jamuna, flowing with the sweetest nectar, is the Shushumna of that body. That's Krishna's body, and that's his abode. All the devas and the elements exist there in a spiritual form. I, the embodiment of all devas, do not leave that forest for a moment, though I appear and disappear in this world, age after age. But this radiant forest of pleasure is invisible to the material eye. So he's speaking about Goloka, which the residents of Sri Vrindavan, the Brajavasis, they wanted to see. So he showed. But the material eye can't see. It's only when Krishna reveals can one see. We're going to hear more on what's this, how is it that you can see this place. Next reference in the commentary is a verse from Brahma Samhita, text 37. We can say it together if you like. Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhabhitabhis Tabirya Eva Nijarudpa Patlabi Goloka Eva Nibisatya Kilatma Bhutto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I'm going to read first Prabhupada's translation, and then we'll read this other one. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord residing in his own realm, Goloka, with Radha, resembling his own spiritual figure, the embodiment of the ecstatic potency possessed of the 64 artistic activities in the company of her confidants, Sakhis, embodiments of the extensions of her bodily form, permeated and vitalized by his ever blissful spiritual rasa. And the translation here is done in a certain way to correspond with the rest of the commentary. It's interesting. I worship the Supreme Lord Govinda, who, though regarding all the inhabitants as his very self resides in Goloka, exclusively with the young gopis who are embodiments of Madhura Rasa, he accepts them as his female companions while they respond to his conjugal affection reciprocally. Quite a different kind of translation. And commentary. Though Krishna has the spiritual form, that is manifested according to the bhava of the particular worshipper. So this is now connecting bhakti with the Supreme Lord, and because we heard bhakti is not different than the Supreme Lord, this is both not different than the Supreme Lord. But one sees his form according to the bhava. We're going to hear some more about that. So one sees him according to one's bhava. That was shown by the Lord to the people of Gokula when he lifted them out of Brahmahrada. Brahmahrada is the name of the place where they went in the river Jamuna. Radha means lake. So here's the translation of this morning's verse again. Krishna showed them his own planet, beyond matter, undecaying and unchanging, composed only of bliss. In this place, there was a forest called Vrindavan, furnished with desired trees, attractive groves, and the happiness of all seasons. That is what is meant by stating that the form, Krishna's form, resides in its own abode. This is the Gopal Tapani Upanishad verse still. The same Lord appears differently according to the bhava of the devotees. Saying it again, as in 10:43:17. This is a celebrated verse. It's a nice one to learn, but at least the essence of that verse, it's Krishna and Balaram, after having killed Kuvalyapida and carrying the broken tusks over their shoulder, they strode into the wrestling arena. That's the scene. And then the verse is, the various groups of people in the arena regarded Krishna in different ways when he entered it with his elder brother. There's 10 different ways, and more, but 10. The wrestlers saw Krishna as a lightning bolt. The men of Mathura as the best of males. 3. The women as Cupid in person. 4. The cowherd men as their relative. 5. The impious rulers as a chastiser. 6. His parents as their child. 7. The king of Bhojas, that's Kamsa, as death. The unintelligent as the Supreme Lord's universal form. 9. The yogis as the absolute truth. And 10. The Vrishnis as their supreme worshipable deity. And there's it's a celebrated verse in Vaishnava circles. Just the first 2 lines are referred to, and everybody knows the verse. The first 2 words. And the rest of the psalm is a lightning bolt, is the meaning. So it's elaborately expanded in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, how different people's Krishna appears in forms according to the mood of love towards Krishna. And it's true for worldly people, and it's also true for transcendental people. Paragraph. The various forms of the Lord appear through pure bhakti for the inhabitants of his spiritual abode. That has been discussed. Now the form of bhakti itself is indicated. That from still this Gopal Tapani verse. Krishna has a body completely composed of knowledge, opposed to dull matter, endowed with form and qualities. Bhakti's nature is that of Krishna's form full of knowledge. And bhakti has a nature like Krishna, completely composed of bliss, opposite of suffering. Thus the meaning is, quote, Krishna, listen to this, I'll read it twice. Krishna resides in bhakti yoga, which is full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, similar to Krishna, who is completely full of bliss and knowledge, endowed with form and qualities. Krishna resides in bhakti yoga, which is full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, similar to Krishna, who is completely full of bliss and knowledge, endowed with form and qualities. Non-difference. And the last I'm going to read this morning is an interesting picture of how Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes. A little background. Bhaktivinoda Thakur didn't receive Srimad Bhagavatam until he was in his mid-30s, because there wasn't a BBT in different languages, so and there was no printing presses, so he got a handwritten copy from a learned friend. And after he read it twice, he just assiduously read it and read it. Then he wrote an essay within the first few months after receiving it. I mean, he is prolific. So, in that essay, he was addressing the scholars of his time because he grew up with the scholarly circle, the Tagore family, etc. And he was a renowned, learned personality. So he wrote about the Srimad Bhagavatam and explained that one of the things is great literature in the world is simply a retelling of Scripture. Because Scripture is the classic. Then he gave the example of John Milton's Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained, because the people of his time were very familiar with European writings, and John Milton was a celebrated guy. He was British. So people knew, the scholarly people knew. So it's just Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained. It's just a retelling of the story of the Bible. He didn't speak about Star Wars, but Star Wars was inspired by Ramayana. The monkey and the female that was put in risk, and everyone was trying to rescue the female. And there are certain themes and strains, without going into it. It's how it's done. Literature that's become celebrated, local literature, has its roots in Scripture. That was his statement. So what he has done, one of the writings was called Jaiva Dharma, and it's taking Scripture and putting it in a modern context, at least modern for that period of time, mid-1800s. So he tells the story. It's a story. It's fiction. There's two young men living in Calcutta, and I forget, it's their birthday or something, so they want to do, instead of have a party, they want to go somewhere and celebrate their birthday. So they decide, let's go to Navadvip. We heard about the place, let's go. And they go, and they have some experiences. One of those experiences is they meet the Babajis, or the Mahasaya, Goswamis, the elevated personalities, and they're having kirtan. Look like, hey, it's a party. So they go, and then the whole book is a question-answer format, where one of the young men, college students named Vijaya, is asking questions. And in the course of, there's modern things that are also explained in that Jaiva Dharma, like these two young men start getting really interested in what these sadhus are saying out there in Navadvip, so mom and dad start getting anxious. You better hurry up and get them married. You may take sannyas and won't see them again. That classic thing that happens sometimes. So they go and ask the sadhus, what should we do? We're getting pressure, we're not prepared for this pressure. Then there's some discussion about what they should do. It's not scriptural, it's time, circumstance, contemporary dialogue. But so the storyline continues, but woven within the storyline is a retelling of Nectar of Devotion, the first 19 chapters, Nectar of Instruction, Rupa Goswami's teachings, and Dasamula Tattva, the 10 essential teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And that's what it is. So we're going to get some of that. It's very much connected to this section that, the residents of Vrindavan being shown Goloka at Brahmahrada. So here we go. That's the context. The chapter heading is Madhurya Rasa. Goswami says, places such as Braja, Gokula, and Vrindavan are within Sri Mathura Mandala. Mathura Mandala and Goloka are non-different from each other. Abheda Tattva. If you don't understand this, don't worry, because Vijay is going to say, what? I don't understand. So he's going to explain. When this one phenomena is situated in the highest region of the Chit Jagat, it is known as Goloka, and when it is manifested within this material universe, it is known as Mathura Mandala. Thus, it is celebrated simultaneously in these two swarups, or forms. Vijay, how is that possible? I don't understand. Goswami, such phenomena are possible only by Krishna's Achintya Shakti. Achintya means inconceivable. All the activities within the jurisdiction of Achintya Shakti are beyond comprehension and argument. That eternal abode of Goloka is called Mathura Dham in the Prakat Lila within the world of gross elements. Prapancha is the Sanskrit term that's used. Just like Rupa Goswami, Prapancha Kataya Bhujya Hari Sambandha Vastuna Mumukshubi Prityago Vairagyom Palgukatate. Prapancha means gross elements, things of this world. So I'll read the sentence again. That eternal abode of Goloka, that's what was shown to the Brijvasis, is called Mathura Dham in the Prakat Lila within the world of gross elements, Prapancha, and this very same place is called Goloka in Aprakat Lila. Krishna's transcendental pastimes are eternal, and Goloka is eternally manifest in the Nitya Jagat. It's not destroyed when this place is destroyed, so it's the Nitya Jagat. Those who have become eligible to have darshan of the pure spiritual substance see Goloka. Not only that, but they can have darshan of Goloka in Gokula itself. That's what the cowherd men did. However, the jiva whose intelligence is material cannot attain the darshan of Goloka. Even though Gokula is Goloka, jivas with mundane intelligence see Gokula as an ordinary place in this material world consisting of 5 gross elements. Then the student says, Vijay, what is the qualification to have darshan of Goloka? Good question. Goswami, Shukadeva Goswami has said, and he refers to verses 14, 15, which we've been reading, so I'm not going to read them. Although the Gopas are eternally perfect, they nonetheless descend to this world as assistants in Krishna's pastimes. So now we're going to hear some other, those that become perfect and those that are eternally perfect. Sadhana, siddhas, and nitya siddhas. Right? You with me? Okay, good. The sadhana siddhagopas were the followers of those nitya siddhagopas. These sadhana siddhagopas thought, due to ignorance, the jiva in this world, the jivas in this world identify themselves with their material bodies. Thus, they are hankering with many types of desires, and they engage in various types of work in order to fulfill them. As a result, they wander aimlessly, accepting rebirth in higher and lower species. we are also engaged in the same activity. That's the sadhaka people. Considering this, the greatly compassionate Bhagavan Sri Krishna, who has inconceivable majestic opulence, granted to those gopas darshan of his Paramadham, Goloka, which is beyond the dense darkness of Maya. The variety in that dham is eternal, absolute reality, full of unlimited spiritual pastimes. That dham is eternally self-manifest, self-illuminated, with the effulgence of Brahman. And it is perceived by the host of sages and sadhakas through trance in a stage beyond the influence of the three gunas. He's just retelling what we've been reading in Jaiva Dharma. So he refers to Vijay as Baba. One cannot have darshan of Goloka without Krishna's mercy. Because his question was, who can have, it's Krishna's mercy. Who can have darshan? Krishna bestowed mercy on the Vrajavasis and granted them darshan of Goloka. This Goloka is the excellent transcendental abode beyond material nature, and its variegatedness is the embodiment of eternal truth and endless spiritual pastimes. The spiritual effulgence of the Brahmajyoti exists there eternally as the brilliant radiance, or prabha, radiance, prabha, of his limbs. When the sadhaka is free from all mundane connections with matter, he can have darshan of that special tattva. Then it gets a little more intricate. Vijay asks, can all liberated persons have darshan of Goloka? We already heard he has to have mercy, so not just liberated persons. Goswami replies, even among millions of liberated souls, a bhakta of Bhagavan is very rare. In Brahma Dham, the jivas who become liberated by the practice of Ashtanga Yoga and Brahma Gyan enjoy forgetfulness of the self, just as a man in a state of deep sleep, sushupti, remains completely inactive, being bereft of power to perceive, to understand, to desire, and so forth. Similarly, the jivas who attain Brahma Dham, that's merging, are oblivious to their own Atma. So they remain like inanimate lumps. What to speak of them? Even bhaktas absorbed in Aishvarya cannot see Goloka. Bhaktas with a mood of Aishvarya render service to an opulent form of the Lord in Vaikuntha, according to their respective bhavas. Even one who engages in Krishna bhajan, in Vrajarasa, can only have darshan of Goloka if he is so fortunate that Krishna bestows mercy upon him and releases him from the Maya's endless bondage. A pretty thorough answer. Who's eligible? Are liberated souls eligible? So now next question. Well, if only this type of liberated bhakta can see Goloka, why has Goloka been described in Shastras as such as Brahma Samhita, Harivamsa, and Padma Purana? If Krishna's mercy is only available through Braja Bhajan, what was the point of even mentioning Goloka? Getting a little more esoteric. We're getting into Braja Bhav. But that's Bhakti Vinod. Goswami, those Braja Rasika Bhaktas whom Krishna elevates to Goloka from this world of five gross elements, prapancha, because pancha means five, prapancha, 5 gross elements, can see Goloka completely. Furthermore, Shuddha Bhaktas in Brajabhav can see Goloka to a certain extent. Okay? There are 2 types of bhaktas, sadhaka and siddha. Sadhakas are not qualified to see Goloka. Again, there are 2 types of siddha bhaktas, namely Vastu siddha bhaktas and Swarup siddha bhaktas. Vastu siddha bhaktas are brought directly to Goloka by Krishna's mercy, whereas Swarup siddha bhaktas see the Swarup of Goloka, but they are still situated in the prapancha, or material existence, and not directly in Goloka. By Krishna's mercy, their eyes of bhakti are in the process of gradually opening, and thus there are many grades of eligibility in this group. Some see a little, some see something more, and others see still more. To the extent that Krishna is merciful to them, they will see Goloka. As long as they are in the sadhana stage of bhakti, whatever darshan they attain of Goloka is tinged with some mayika bhav. After crossing the stage of sadhana and reaching the level of bhava, their darshan is somewhat pure, and when they arrive at the stage of prema, they begin to have darshan to the full extent. Just one more question and answer, and we're done. Vijay, Prabhu, in what respects are Goloka and Braja different from each other? Goswami says, everything that one sees in Braja is present in Goloka. But the various aspects appear somewhat different because of differences in the nishtha of the observer. In fact, there is no difference between Goloka and Vrindavan. They appear differently to different observers depending on their different vision. Extremely ignorant people see everything in Braja as material. The vision of a person in Rajoguna is somewhat more auspicious compared to this, and those who are situated in Sattva Guna have darshan of the Shuddha Sattva according to their ability to see. Everyone's vision is different according to their adhikara or qualification. So that's this morning's subject matter. It's a little different than a Bhagavad Gita class. The fundamentals that are necessary to go further, they're found progressively in our Bhakti Shastras. There's no contradiction between them, but in order to stand these more subtle points, it certainly helps to have a strong foundation. And more than helps, it's essential to have a strong foundation in Bhagavad Gita's message. So he placed so much emphasis on Bhakti Shastri, studying the Bhakti texts. At the same time, it's good to know when you get on a train, where's the train going? I use this example because when I visit China, there's the international flights in and the international flights out, but most of the travel within China is by train because they have really fast trains. They travel at really high speeds. So it's common. So there's a zillion people in China, and so they commonly travel a lot by train. Me too. And going into a train station in China is kind of terrifying. In this sense, there's so many people. Now, I'm used to seeing a lot of people in New York, but somewhere over there in a place that I had never heard the name of the place, and you go into the train station terminal, and there's a zillion people. I just saw some statistic that the Atlanta airport is the #1 transportation airline, or not, air terminal in the world, and right behind it is Beijing. But it's more than Beijing. And anyway, and the train stations, they're more than both of those. So when you go, me, those that do not speak Chinese, and there's all these zillions of people running around, like, okay, trains take you to your destination, but you better know what your destination is. Because if you get on the wrong train, you can be sorry. Especially when you don't speak English, or don't speak Chinese. They once had me travel, I don't know why, it wasn't real thought out. They brought me to the car, they got special permission to take me right to the car, and sitting in the car, and I don't even know when to get off. Fortunately, there was somebody in front of me that could speak a little English and said, I want to get off at such and such place. Can you let me know when we get there? Anyway, it's very wild. So you keeping that image in mind, when you start the bhakti process, where is it meant to take you? What's the goal? And many times I heard Prabhupada say, when you very clearly identify a goal, it's very easy to take steps to get to the goal. And conversely, if you don't have a clear idea what the goal is, it's very hard to take steps to get to the goal, because you don't even know where you're going. Common sense. And so it's good to have this elevated discussion, although it's way over our heads, because it gives us a picture of what the goal is. And there's variety within this goal. There are varieties of rasa, there's varieties of nomenclature, there's varieties of abodes, there are varieties of forms, there's similarities and there's differences, and it's important to know, one may not be fixed in the preliminary stages of the bhakti process in clear understanding of the goal, or even what is bhakti and what is Krishna, etc. But it's good to have something of an idea, and so we're getting more than something of an idea. Like this little description, compliments of Bhakti Vinod. We were hearing in text 14 the contemplation of the cowherd men, in one sense, in a message of humility, considering themselves to be like conditioned souls. And Krishna, considering that they were like that. They don't even know what their mission, their destination is. But Bhakti Vinod made this distinction. There's nitya siddhas that here's Prabhupada's explanation. Supposing that lovely day comes when we achieve spiritual perfection, what happens next? What happens next is we join Krishna's roadshow, Prabhupada's language, where Krishna is performing his pastimes in this world, in somewhere, and the nitya siddhas train up the sadhana siddhas or kripa siddhas how to do your devotional service nicely in that liberated state. So the sadhana siddhas are looking up to the nitya siddhas. And the sadhana siddhas, they're wondering, we're like people that are ignorant, forced by karma to go higher, lower species, where's our destination? Is Krishna going to show us and take us to his eternal abode? Making that distinction between the Nityasiddhas aren't thinking like that. Now one can also say Nityasiddhas were thinking like that. This is the explanation I gave before. Due to their natural humility. They don't have to be thinking of themselves high. They can think of themselves, we're just like everybody else. We just happen to be fortunate having Krishna as our friend, our son, our beloved member of the community. But he's making this distinction. And for sadhakas, because the question is, how do we become eligible? Well, become eligible by association with the Nityasiddhas. And for us, it just means hearing what we're doing. Bhagavad Gita gives us this picture of Arjuna. And the Bhagavatam is giving us the picture of other perfected devotees, and now in the 10th canto, Krishna's eternal devotees in Vrindavan. And through sound we can associate with them. And we can become elevated by that sound vibration as much as by hearing about Krishna, by hearing about Krishna's associates. Spiritually it's the same. Hearing about his dham, hearing about his paraphernalia, hearing about what he eats. It's all of the same spiritual potency. So that gives us a glimpse of the goal, and it'll help us when we're having Bhagavad Gita class and reading and studying to refine our understandings with even more vigor than just gathering knowledge. It's to prepare us for this long journey back home, back to Godhead. So let's see if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So like you mentioned, this seems to be such a high goal. So like in my personality, I usually like when something is very high, like I can't even think about it. I just kind of not even focus that much, rather just do what is a short term, like
Fine,
what I see.
fine. So the principle of Bhagavad Gita is perform your prescribed duty and always think of me. That's pretty simple. And then you unpack always think of me. Well, how do I always, because this is one of the common questions, one of the top 5 on the Swami questions is how do I be mindful of Krishna in the workplace? I mean, it's said in different ways. Always think of me. Perform my prescribed duty. Okay, and always think of me. Well, I can think of him in the morning and the evening, but when I'm in the workplace, I don't think of him. So how do I fulfill that instruction? So that just keep going, keep going, keep going, and keep going, keep going. So higher consciousness people, because of being attached to the object, so we're not there yet. We can perform our prescribed duty, that's okay, and maybe struggle with the mind because somebody says something nasty or whatever, something. But, stay on course with perform our prescribed duty. But how do we always think of Krishna? When one hears the nature of Krishna, the all-loving Krishna, one can be very simple and be very Krishna conscious, being very simple. Krishna is my shelter. Then what does that mean? You just keep going, keep going. Well, he's all attractive. What does that mean? Keep going, keep going. So that's the always think of Krishna part. Yes, the goal is high, but that's always thinking of Krishna that's the instruction. And And how do you do it? How you do it is, when there's attachment, that's who you always think of, or what you always think of. For the miser, it's money, and for a drug addict, it's the drug addiction, and for somebody, it's something else. If you're an Olympic athlete, it's get the gold medal, and everybody has some. So the mind goes where your attachment is. So how do you become attached to Krishna? Well, it requires detachment from matter, and then understanding the nature of Krishna. Then you can always think of Krishna. Detachment from matter. So we're hearing about his merciful nature, and his abode, and his name, and his form, and those are hearing, and that's the Bhagavad Dharma method, so that we become attached to Krishna, detached from matter, so we can always think of Krishna. And it's gradual. It's not so different. You began your question with, I have a certain personality that's like this, and somebody else has one that's like that, and we like the other one. So there's nothing, it's totally natural that we have our own personality. But so you keep it simple, because that's your nature, and that's fine. Having a goal that's too high, it's just, I can't relate to it. But it's good to know what the goal is, and to take little steps in the direction of the goal, which is what you're doing. And, a large part of that is through service. And, name the services that you do for the devotee community and for your family and so forth. And that's purification. That's perform the prescribed duty part, and acting according to your nature. And then there's the other part, doing what we're doing right now, which is detachment from matter, attachment to Krishna. Prabhupada gives this example specific to a train. Life has phases. Like, you get in a train to go somewhere, and you're looking out the window, and you see this, and you see that, and you see the other thing. You pass through the countryside, and some place where there's mountains, and you see you're coming towards an urban area, and then it gets all built up. And so life is like that. The passage of time changes things in our life. And when we become accustomed to the not attached to the specific, what we're passing through at the moment, but more towards the goal. Because the prescribed duty has to do with what's happening in the moment. And then there's the goal. The goal is actually eternally with us, just forgotten. So the Bhagavad Dharma method is to go there. Bring consciousness to that place, the goal, through passage of time and the experiences and the stages of life and so forth. I mean, here's some couple of young people, and their occupation, their mind is occupied with what young people's minds are occupied with. And then at some stage it's going to be off to college and build their career, and then some stage it's going to be get a job, and then some stage it's going to be, all the other, and there's absorption in what's going on at the moment. But throughout the whole thing, what's the goal? The goal is a high one. I mean, spiritual life, just like this verse quoted yesterday at the initiation, Jigyasa Uttama. Spiritual life is for people that are inquiring, what's the Uttama? Shreya Uttama. Shreya Uttama. Long-term goal. And spiritual life means we put our attention there. We're paying attention toward the passing of time and the circumstances and things we have to deal with. And we wanted to have some clarity in what the goal is and how to reach it. As we're passing through the phases of time. And different, now you have children, the children are going to grow up, and then it's going to be a whole other life without the children in the home. So, and then what comes after that? What comes after that? Where are we going? What's the mission of life? So while doing the little changes of time things, and you're doing it nicely, what's the goal? The goal is Krishna. So let me hear about Krishna. So we're hearing about Krishna. And he's the goal. Having exchanges of love with different devotees according to their nature. Anything else?
Yeah, Maharaj, you're talking about the goal of life, right? Meaning for the devotee, like as a aspiring devotees are, starting in the career. What do we aspire for? What is our goal? How do we set our goal in the spiritual life?
Well, there's long-term and ultimate goals, and then there's steps. Like, so, to give a name to the goal, you could use different language. I have an eternal relationship with Krishna. I'd like to have that revived, awakened, and fully operative in my life. I want to be in my relationship with Krishna fully while I'm doing everything in my life. Or you can say, go back to Godhead, or you could say become self-realized, and there's different ways of saying.
But how do we know, like, meaning? I've not been thinking that I come to Krishna consciousness, I don't know the way I'm, seeing the things, right? So that it reveals to ourselves, or at the same time, where do we take the turns, right? Because always life gives a choice, left or right, right?
Well, you should align choices with the goal and your values. It's good. We had this nice exercise. Here's an exercise you can consider responsive to your question. There's always choices, and there's multiple choices whenever we're making choices. So a little exercise is, at the end of the day, you take a few minutes with a paper in front of you and say, what were the important choices that I made today? And A or B or combination. Were the choices made in alignment with my values, or were the choices that I made, or that particular choice made because of circumstance and convenience rather than my values? And then keep doing that so your choices are in line with your values. And then you want another exercise is, are my values in line with my deepest held convictions? Because values can change. My deepest held convictions don't change. That's life management. So deepest held conviction is the ultimate goal. Shreya Uttama, ultimate good thing. Instead of just the momentary, the ultimate good thing. That ideally, let's say the deepest place of consciousness, that doesn't change. It is what it is, what it is, what it is. And we may have a more clear, less clear understanding of what it is, but it's an unchanging reality. So our values in alignment with that, and our choices in alignment with our values. That's self-realization in a nutshell. know who you are. And that includes knowing, not letting go of who you're not. It includes making choices that are not in alignment with who you are. Because you make choices, then you're responsible for the choice and the outcome of the choice, and you can easily get off the path and get entangled in something.
Another question I have, Maharaj, was about the siddhas, right? So,
About the which?
siddhas, like sadhana siddha,
Sadhana siddha.
nitya
Okay.
siddha, right?
Okay.
So, the path of Krishna consciousness, like what Prabhupada is giving us, is to try to be in a sadhana siddha, like following the regulative principles, or
Well, we're instructed to be sadhakas, and a goal of a sadhaka is sadhaka siddha, but that comes by following the nitya siddhas. We have our role models, persons who we look up to from scripture and in our everyday life, and we look up to those people, and we're trying to mold our sadhana towards that which these elevated souls are manifesting according to our nature, etc., our mood and our disposition. We're trying to become. I'm just editing the language that we're not sadhana siddhas, we're aspiring for that by a process, a gradual process, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur captured in his writing. There are different stages of that.
the best benefit of the kids and for myself, like, can you just give a brief understanding of type of siddhas and maybe examples in the scriptures, like who belongs to which
You want some examples?
yes.
Well, the Nitya Siddhas are Krishna's eternal associates. Sadhana Siddhas, we can say, is like Dhruva from scripture. Or we could say Bharat Maharaj, and then later Jad Bharat. Sadhana. And Kripa Siddha, let's say Putana. She just got a lot of mercy. Kripa Siddha. I'd have to think a little bit more about examples of Kripa Siddha, those that become perfect just by mercy. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj.
There are 3 online questions.
Okay.
First question is from Bhakti Vishalaksha Das. Lord Sri Krishna appears as per the bhava of the respective devotees.
Yeah.
So what kind of a specific bhava one should develop while practicing the principles of bhakti?
Well, we don't try to cultivate a particular bhava. We try to cultivate a mood of humble service. And when the consciousness of the soul awakens, there are intrinsic or natural for oneself bhavas or moods of love that awaken. So we don't try to cultivate a particular bhava, we try to cultivate a mood of humble service, that Krishna should be pleased. That's what we should do.
This next question is from Sucharita Mataji. Should the goal be to obtain Krishna prema, or does it vary from person to person?
Yeah, I touched on that. The language may be different from person to person. The essence is the essence, and how it's expressed depends on the individual person. Even what one's understanding of what Krishna prema is may be different for different persons, and even within one person, my understanding today may not be the same as tomorrow, may not be the same as 1 year from now. It may evolve what my understanding of Krishna prema is. But certainly, yes, that's a suitable goal, and others may express it in a different way.
This next question is from Rupa Vilas Prabhu. Usually I am discouraged to go to a place which is very crowded. Similarly, I get discouraged when I see so many devotees competing to get attention of spiritual master. Similarly, I get discouraged to visit a holy place which is too crowded. How do I overcome this mental block?
Well, I don't like crowded places either. I mean, depends on what's going on. Like, I don't like, anyway, it depends on what's going on. I purposefully once stayed in Mayapur after the Mayapur festival to see what it's like after the Mayapur festival and stay for Gaur Purnima. So Mayapur at Gaur Purnima is wall-to-wall people, and it's like pickpocket heaven. They warn everybody that they're just people. That's paradise for them. They are very expert at picking people's pockets, and because people bodies are just pressed against one another like anything, all over the whole place. So I decided I don't want to be in Mayapur for Purnima anymore. It's just so. It was nice to experience it, and also up on the balcony of the building, looking at the sea of people, and I was just curious if I could pick out the pickpockets. But it's just not very. And if there's what happens in some cases is there's a loud sound like a firecracker or a gunshot, and then people panic and they crush each other because they're trying to get out and they can't. So it's like very dangerous. So I don't think there's a reason to try to get over not liking crowds. I don't like crowds either. But sometimes, like we have festivals, we have parikramas in holy places during Kartik. And it's busy, like really crowded. Mangalarti and Krishna Balar Mandir during the Kartik month is, it's really intense. But we go anyway because it's Kartik. So if there's a purpose, then you can overcome, then otherwise no problem. Now, persons being eager to seek attention of the spiritual master, that's not like crowds of people, but it's ambition, and it's a different thing than crowds of people. And I saw that during Prabhupada's time, and I didn't like scream or anything. I just decided I don't want to take part in that, and let me just do my service and be happy doing my service rather than the other. And I saw that those that did the other, they were, their quality was, their quality of bhakti wasn't so nice, and after Prabhupada left, they left because their their ambition wasn't, the object of their ambition wasn't around anymore. So just that on that third one, just check yourself. Don't judge others. Just decide, I don't. That's an area I don't want to go to, and you do your service in a different way. Anything else?
Two more.
Okay.
One from Mahimataji from Arizona. Sometimes life's dealings is not conducive to spiritual progress. Is it okay to wait patiently with faith for circumstances to change?
Yeah. And they may not, but it's okay. And rise above them is besides wait. Tolerate and wait for change, because generally things change. And it may not change. It may, there may be that Krishna wants something other than just learn patience. You learn acceptance. It's not going to change. It's hot in Arizona. It's not going to change. Seasons come and go, but it's hot in Arizona. It's just it's cold in Chicago. Not going to change. So just accept it. That's the way it is. And turn your attention to something that gives you enthusiasm.
This is from Shashirika Mataji. With sadhana siddha bhakti, how is it possible to cultivate nishkam bhakti and bhava for Krishna? I think sadhana bhakti sometimes can be very mechanical.
Well, this was your question. You can answer her question later. Doing things that are the answer to the mechanical is one answer is just remind yourself of for whom you are doing this. That's bhakti. You can do the behavior, but the behavior may not be consistent with what your value is and your goal is. So bhakti is to reset. Am I thinking, is this being done for Krishna's pleasure? And, most likely the answer is a little bit. Otherwise, I'd be doing something else instead of this. So it's a little bit, but it's not very significant. So then you turn to Krishna and say, Krishna, I'm in this mechanical space once again, and I want to be more mindful of my relationship with you. And so you cultivate bhakti in different way, whatever works for different people. That I suggested one approach. But Krishna should be pleased. That's the operative principle of bhakti. Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam. I suggest to her, as I suggested to you, she can go to the place where there's recordings on from the heart and hear the whole thing. It's just explaining Rupa Goswami's core definition of what bhakti is. Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam. That's the operative principle. The primary principle, the others are secondary. Krishna should be pleased. That's it. How about you two? Anything? You're okay. Is this a little high and you're like, no, you're okay. A little bit, huh? Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.